Good afternoon, everybody. You were probably in our morning session, a lot of you, and learned a little bit about Da Vinci. So Da Vinci is a fire accelerator, and our focus is on value-based care. When we say the word value-based care, that implies payers and providers, and of course the organizations that support them. We're not going to define Da Vinci a whole lot this afternoon, but we want to talk a little bit in this presentation about our work in the regulatory environment and how some of our work has moved forward. So with that, I'll just tell you I'm Linda Michaelsen. My credibility is I've been with Da Vinci since the very beginning, as well as other accelerators like Argonaut and the Fire at Scale Task Force. I'm an educator and a bunch of other roles in HL7. And with me is my buddy, Jeff.
Hi, can you hear me?
Lean in, Jeff.
Okay, there we go, much better. Name is Jeff Brown. I'm Healthcare Standards Advisor at Lantana Consulting Group. I actually am part of the core leadership team of the Da Vinci Burden Reduction Project, and author of the Documentation Templates and Rules, IG. Also a HL7 certified educator and certified and technical steering committee member, and co-chair a couple different work groups as well. So glad to be working with Linda on this, and Da Vinci is such a great opportunity for us to understand value-based care and what we're able to do through FIRE for that.
And all of our work is always done under the antitrust statement from HL7. We're around fairness and opportunity for everybody to compete in their own respective businesses. We just work on the interoperability. I often like to say it's the how, not the what, and in the work that we do. So you've noticed a lot of changes this year have come out this year and late last year in regulation. And the entities that are involved in regulation and in getting to this point are the government entities, and you know them well, ONC, CMS, and a bunch of different organizations that are influential in looking at the problems that are apparent in our industry and ways to potentially solve them. They often work with standards development organizations, of which HL7 is one, and we are an accelerator that is part of HL7. So that's kind of the role that we fit here. And then you also have the multi-stakeholder groups, the groups that represent the physicians or the EMRs or the payers in the industry and concerns that they have. The concern I have heard since I started working with Da Vinci was especially around burden reduction for our providers. You heard here today about the burnout, and I would tell you that burnout happens not only in providers, but also in the payer organizations and also in the vendors that have to try to make it work better for our providers and payers. So why is now the right time for this? Well, we've had some implementation success. We were given permission with Da Vinci to go out and try doing prior authorization without using the X12 standards. And we have some success stories coming out of that, and we'll be publishing the work from that later this summer. We also are in a regulatory and certification environment. So regulatory entities like CMS are looking to find ways to better providers' lives. And they are doing that now by writing regulations. The barriers to data sharing are dropping. There are better tools to scale the data, and as you heard in the last presentation around bulk, we have ways to do this that we didn't have in the past and were not offered by other standards. And then we want to reduce the burden and support the shift to value-based care. You cannot do value-based care with claims data. You need more data. You have to know. You cannot tell, even from a CPT-2 code of an A1C result, you cannot tell if a patient's A1C is going up or down over the course of time. You have to have clinical data to get them into a management program before they end up on insulin, metformin, whatever other drugs they need. So this year we were blessed with the CMS 0057. Most people refer to it as the prior authorization rule, and that's what my friend Jeff's going to talk about a little bit later. But it had many things in it around using for the impacted payers. Impacted payers are ones that CMS basically has control over, like Medicare Advantage, the Medicaids, the CHIPs, and some is for the qualified health plans on the federally funded exchange. And I know I got that word right. Avinash will correct me later. And so when this rule came out, and by the way, before a rule comes out as final, it comes out as a proposed rule. So we've been following along with Da Vinci. We knew about the burden. In 2018, we started work on our first implementation guide that's a part of the burden reduction 3 guides. So we've known about it for a while, and we've kept CMS informed about our work as we went forward. We also followed the proposed rule and tried to make sure RIGs aligned with everything in that proposed rule. When the rule came out, it listed all of these APIs, including FHIR, but additionally it listed some that they recommended, and I've heard Alex Muggy from CMS say more than once, highly recommended. There's still maturity on these guides. There were things in the rule that were not finalized until in the final rule, so changes have to be made. We also know that HTI 1 added US CDI v3 as a requirement. So all those things have to be taken into consideration before we will be fully aligned. So when people say, why weren't they required? That's why. But they're highly recommended. When CMS is highly recommended, pay attention. And sooner or later it will move. So just to give you an idea, these are the groups that are part of Da Vinci. We worked really hard to get providers to come into this and play a role. They are important. They have the knowledge about their concerns. So we have a large group of providers as well as the payers, the EHRs, and vendors in the space, and industry partners like HL7 and NCQA. One of the guides we created was PDEX. It was named, it's recommended in the patient access APIs, and it's been used in those and available. And PDEX is the one that allows you to exchange clinical data. So the PDEX Provider Access API is a requirement now of the new CMS 0057. It's very similar, but has a slightly different, slight change to it, requiring that you know that the patient has a relationship or is attributed to that provider. And to do that, the things on the left-hand side are things we're adding into the PDEX IG this year so that it can support that. We don't necessarily say you have to use these. These are just ways that you might. Create your attribution list from either claims history, you can create it from appointments that have been made with that provider, or an encounter start with that provider. Imagine that from the perspective of an ER urgent care where you don't necessarily have an appointment. Or you can have rules. Maybe payers decide that they just want any provider that is participating with them, they'll put something in their contract to cover this work. So we'll see how that all plays out, but we're working on that and how it would work with the groups that are used in our ATI or member IG that shows you how to lay out those groups to know if they have a relationship. For payer to payer, we needed to talk about how you do patient match. So on the left-hand side again, you're seeing how with the data request they can go back and create and look at for the matched members at the old payer and then just request the data on those matched members. So this is being added to the PDEX guide. Mark Scrimshire is here, and if you have any additional questions, if you'd raise your hand, he's your guy, and he can answer all those for you. Now, the one that is taking the most time, Jeff, I would say, which is why he dominates the FHIR Connect-a-thon with his tables, is the burden reduction.
Thanks, Linda. So Burden reduction is, as Linda said, just seems to be the really hot topic these days, obviously due to prior authorization being the primary workflow that is supported here. Before I get into a real high-level look at this, I do want to encourage anyone that wants to dig into burden reduction to join me on Thursday morning, because I have a presentation, a tutorial for 45 minutes on burden reduction, basically prior authorization, automation, and much more. So basically what it can do with the constituent parts here, you'll see that we have coverage requirements discovery, implementation guide, documentation templates and rules, prior authorization support. These are the core pieces to what we call burden reduction. As again, the primary workflow is prior authorization. That's one reason why it's so interesting to everyone right now and such a hot topic. But you'll also notice that we also throw in clinical data exchange, another Da Vinci implementation guide that will allow us to do the attachments piece for prior authorization. Again, I'm not going to dig into too much about this. I am the Connectathon track lead for burden reduction, and it is one of the largest tracks that we have at Fire Connectathons. If anyone out there is interested in joining in, please let me know. I'd be glad to have you in there. The more information we have coming back from the implementers, that's what makes this successful. One thing that I will be pointing out when we have our tutorial on Thursday is this middle part you see in the red, which has to do with a HIPAA mandated X12 component that we now have an enforcement discretion available to us to not use if we don't want to. Okay, so there's a lot that goes into that. It sounds simple, but it's not quite as simple as it sounds, but I will dig into that more. So I will actually cover each of these pieces in depth and more about the use cases, more about the prior authorization workflow. So please join me on Thursday, and back to you, Linda.
Thank you, Jeff. But wait, there's more. These are all the use cases and IGs that Da Vinci is currently working on. So you see we have work that's being rapidly adopted right now for risk adjustment reporting, the ability for a payer to share risk, perceived condition category codes with the providers, even ones that they suspect from algorithms, so that they can do that in a uniform way. And just in the last, 3 months, we have at least 6 participants that are actively working on using that risk adjustment IG. Additionally, we are moving, as we mentioned this morning, we are moving all of our implementation guides to use the US CDI v3, or otherwise known as US Core 6.1 this year. And we're working with the management group and the infrastructure group at HL7, so we do it in a way that will be uniform across the US industry. So it's not just how Da Vinci does it and how the rest of the world does it. We're presenting, we're getting their approval, et cetera, for that process we showed this morning. But what's important? The important part is actually getting these adopted and used at scale. They don't save money until everybody is using them at scale. So what are we doing in that effort? Whoops, now I have to go back. We are working with a group called Trebuchet, and that was developed, if any of you know Dave DeGandy from Cambia, he likes to launch trebuchets, so we're launching these IGs into production. And we're looking at how they can be used now with something called the DURSA in the US. And then as we move forward with FIRE inside of TEFCA, how we can use the common agreement of TEFCA to start sending data through for all of our IGs. I think we're starting with CDEX is the one I've heard most commonly, which is the ability for a payer to ask for data and then the provider to return the data using this interoperability of TEFCA, which is, hopes to scale us nationally. And that's a part of Da Vinci, but anybody can join and participate. We would love to get more QHINs as well as more participants in this, so that we don't want to do things just for one of anything. We want it across the board. Here's a list of all of our working sessions. They can all be found HL7.org under events and the conference calls. They are all open to the public. Anyone can join. Anyone can participate. And lastly, we have, my computer is done. We have our resources that are on HL7's Confluence page. Anybody can go to this page and access any of the data here about our use cases. We've had demos of people that are already in production with a lot of these IGs, and they presented it on our community roundtables, and the recordings are there. You can see what they've done and how they've used it. With that, I'm going to end, Daniel, with the whole what? 3 minutes left for questions?
We have a question there.
This is the most fun and exciting presentation for me, coming from the payer side.
Thank you.
There's not much mention about the pharmacy prior auth. Is that something on the roadmap, or any thoughts about that?
I think the pharmacy, the real-time pharmacy benefit, that has mostly been worked through NCPDP. Even the fire work part of it, they've been presenting it and is being worked through HL7 if they, using the fire portion, but that is not in Da Vinci's wheelhouse at the moment. Although I will tell you, a lot of the people that work on Da Vinci have great expertise in that area, ironically.
Any other questions? While we're waiting for the hands to come up, I will say that, please, anyone that has interest in Da Vinci in general, or burden reduction specifically, please come to me or Linda, and we'll get you the information you need, include you in any calls that you're interested in. The more the merrier when it comes to this. That's how we make the progress we make. So we look forward to having you join us on all these adventures we have.
And if I can make the same appeal but a different vein, we need the subject matter experts. Technology can be done by almost any of us in the room. The people that know how these business processes work, both on the provider side and on the payer side, we need you. We need to make sure what we're doing makes sense from a business or provider perspective. So please join us. And Jeff, I think we did it. We didn't run over. Woo-hoo.
Somehow.
Bye, guys. Thank you.